Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we've got a truly fascinating piece of source material to unpack. We're going to dive into a text by an author named Su-Shang Feng, and it's titled 8 Standards to Determine Whether the Soul is Perfect. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like a heavy, abstract philosophy text, right? Well, actually, scratch that. It doesn't start with dense theology at all. It hooks us with a completely wild, life-or-death, real-world scenario. The author uses this intense event to introduce some incredibly profound concepts about existence, spiritual perfection, and honestly, just how we survive the dangers of the world. It's this brilliant bridge between the physical and the metaphysical, and I am super excited to guide you through it. So let's just jump right in.
Okay, the text launches straight into a gripping story based on a viral video, and it centers entirely around one very specific number, 16. Imagine just for a second a terrifying torrential mudslide crashing down a mountain. It's an unstoppable force. But the author describes how this massive wave of destruction miraculously paused. It literally held back all its debris for exactly 16 seconds. And the purpose of this unbelievably precise pause? It was to allow a single van, which was caught directly in the path of the destruction, to escape. The author points out that this is something you have to watch over and over again because it's just so impossible. It's this tiny 16-second window where the laws of nature seemingly just took a breath.
And Xu Feng uses some really evocative language to describe exactly what that driver was up against. The text literally calls it the whirlpool of death. And that really hits home, right? It highlights the absolute visceral danger there. There was zero conventional way out of this situation. But here's what makes this event absolutely crucial to the author's larger point. The text explicitly notes what happened immediately after the van got to safety. The mudslide resumed. And it didn't just resume, it crashed down with even greater, more violent force. It's this exact sequence, the pause, the escape, and the violent resumption, that builds the entire foundation for the author's argument.
So, what does this all mean? Well, the text doesn't treat this as just a lucky break or some weird geological glitch. Xu Feng interprets it as undeniable evidence of higher forces at work. Impartially speaking, the author draws a bold, direct conclusion from this event, arguing that this 16-second pause proves 3 things. Karma is real, divine power is real, and miracles absolutely do happen. In the context of this source material, that mudslide is the ultimate proof of concept. The author is basically saying, hey, if you want proof that there's more to the universe than random chance, look right here.
With that dramatic real-world proof established, the text then shifts gears into a theoretical framework, moving into our next section, the hierarchy of life.
Xu Feng sets up this really stark contrast. It's kind of like a giant map that connects the level of a life, the state of its soul, and the reality that life actually experiences. On one side, we have higher-level life. The text argues that the higher the level, the more perfect the soul. These lives exist in more perfect worlds, and here's the kicker. A more perfect soul is naturally equipped to just avoid risks and dangers altogether. Then, on the flip side, we have lower-level life. This is characterized by a flawed or even a deformed soul. Because of that flaw, these lives live in incomplete worlds and are way more prone to falling into hardship, hitting crises, and getting stuck in risky situations. So, thinking back to the mudslide, the implication is that the driver's escape wasn't random at all. It was the manifestation of a higher-level soul naturally avoiding that whirlpool of death.
So if a perfect soul is what keeps us out of danger, what are we supposed to do about it? That brings us to our next section, the root of life. This is hands down one of the most striking comparisons in the entire text. Xu Feng states outright that perfecting your soul is the single most important task of your lifetime. And they don't just say it's important, they put a number on it. The text claims it is thousands, literally tens of thousands of times more important than the stuff we usually chase, earning money, climbing the ladder, pursuing power and status. The author places this massive, incomparable weight on internal spiritual growth. In this framework, external material success is basically irrelevant compared to the protective, elevating power of a perfect soul. To really hammer this idea home, the text gives us a simple but profound definition. The soul is defined as the root of life. Period. This is the absolute baseline for the author's entire spiritual philosophy. Everything else we experience, our safety, our success, the world around us, it all stems directly from this one hidden source.
And to make this super relatable, Xu Feng uses a really powerful everyday analogy. Think of a plant. In step 1, if the roots of a plant are developing and healthy, the plant thrives, right? It grows luxuriantly. But in step 2, once those roots start to decay, well, the outcome is pretty inevitable. The plant is going to wither and die. Just like a plant relies entirely on its roots to survive, the author argues that our ability to thrive and our ability to dodge life's metaphorical and literal mudslides depends entirely on the health of our soul. If the root is rotten, you're not going to flourish, no matter how much money or status you have.
Okay, so what's the ultimate goal here? And what does it actually take to reach that perfection? Let's get into our final section, the path to heaven. The text explains that while there are plenty of ways to tell if a soul is doing well, there is a foundational checklist. The author calls this the 8 standards. When you can evaluate yourself against these standards and actually meet them, it provides a solid foundation to confirm that your soul has reached perfection. And remember what we talked about earlier? Achieving that perfect state means you've cultivated a soul that naturally avoids risks and disasters. You basically graduate out of the chaotic, dangerous reality of a lower-level existence.
To wrap up this process, the source text points out 3 absolutely critical requirements at the very end. The author says that to assure your path to heaven, you have to hit these marks: selflessness, detachment, and freedom from debts. And just to clarify, in this context, debts heavily implies spiritual and karmic debts, not just your credit card bill. These 3 pillars represent the ultimate refinement. They elevate the soul completely out of the crises and hardships of the incomplete worlds we talked about earlier.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. The exact question the author poses directly to the reader in the text. How can you determine whether your soul is perfect? Xu uses the miracle of that 16-second mudslide to show us the stakes, to make the case that higher powers exist and that the state of our soul dictates our safety and our ultimate destination. We've seen the framework, we've looked at the plant analogy to understand the mechanics, and we've outlined the path to heaven. But that final evaluation? That rests entirely on this one provocative question. It's an incredibly fascinating way to look at the world, pushing us to examine the very root of our own lives. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll leave you to ponder that final question for yourself.